Have you ever sat in a room and you look around and every person you speak to, every person you talk to just seems not to understand? And you look around and you have that thought and you think, am I surrounded by idiots? Well, that's the topic of our next conversation. And this gentleman actually had exactly that same feeling. He thought he was surrounded by idiots, but he didn't just leave it there. He wrote a book. The book is called Surrounded by Idiots by Thomas Erikson. It has sold close to 10 million copies worldwide in 70 different languages. It's making it one of the most popular books where behavior meets psychology, meets the real world. And I'm really, really glad to have Thomas in our studio today to share his insights and stories and background and experience on not just the book itself, but his experiences in being surrounded by idiots. This is going to be a great one. Look forward to it. Thomas Erikson, thank you and welcome to Empathy at the Table.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation.
Now, for our listeners, I will say this is the second time around. We had a wonderful conversation a couple of weeks ago, and it was so fantastic that we kind of forgot about the technicalities of making sure that everything worked. And by the end, when we came to edit it, nothing worked. So we have nothing to show from the first conversation, except what we're going to build on today, which is going to be a much deeper, richer conversation, because I know you a lot better than I did before. So I'm really looking forward to this, Thomas. And I think just to kick off, for our listeners that maybe haven't heard of you, haven't read your book, and I hope they now will, could you share a little bit about your trajectory into this world of human behavior and human psychology?
Of course. Well, I, as many other people, stumbled into this by accident, or maybe, well, by accident, or maybe just because my general demeanor was not perfect when I was a young man. I got my first managing position at the age of 24. I was a good sales rep, so I thought if I could sell, I could probably lead the sales reps. I could probably be a good team leader also, of course. Turns out two very different jobs, but no one told me. I did a good interview, so they hired me for some reason. They shouldn't have done that, actually. So I got the job and I started working there, and it was a bank. This is many years ago. As anyone is looking at the video can see, if I was 24 back then. Anyways, I messed it up pretty badly because I didn't know anything. So people came to me and said, we have a little bit of a problem here. What should we do? And I said, well, you better fix that. And they said, well, how about this problem then? And how about that problem? Well, fix it. That's all I had to say. I didn't know. I was, managing things here. And after 6 months, I started to understand this isn't running smoothly. This is not good at all. So I went to my boss's boss 2 levels up, really. And I told him, I think you're going to have to take me out of this equation. I don't know what I'm up to here. I can't make this work. And his actual response was, you better stay put, Sonny, because your boss is even worse than you. She's not even here. Uh, so I struggled along, and after about 11, 12 months, I managed to get out of there because, it just didn't work. And when you sit around the coffee table, when you're leaving your position for the last time, the last day, they gather some couple of bucks, they have brought you a gift. Someone baked a cake, you sit there and they wish you the best of luck on your future career. They didn't give me anything. I give them a plan, basically. And I basically said, I'm sorry. I know I had messed it up. I didn't really know how. And one lady, she felt so bad for me during this horrible, awkward silence. She said, well, it got a little bit better at the end. Right. No one agreed. And it was just horrible. And then the HR department called me up and they said, would you fancy a personality test? And I said, sure, why not? I'm a happy learner. Of course, I'm into that. So I filled in the questionnaire and I got the report in my hand, and it was a horrible read. It was just horrible. And I said, is this how people see me when I introduce myself to the room? And they said, oh, yes. Would you like to talk about it? And I said, I better do that. And that's where I started investigating, looking into, trying to interpret myself in a way, trying to figure myself out. Because at the age of, well, I was 25 then. It's really hard when you never thought of how you act, how you talk, how you walk, how you sort of move around in society. I hadn't reflected on that one bit. That's why I messed it up. And that's where I started my journey on building better self-awareness, really, building social competence, people skills. And I haven't stopped ever since. That's
Mm.
how I sort of jumped on this bandwagon, really. And I'm getting there. Soon, I know, I learn more every, not daily, but every month I learn something new about me.
And
Fascinating
and
study.
we said at the beginning, right, that I think I said it really tongue in cheek. This idea: have you ever been in a situation where you're surrounded by idiots? I think the premise of the book is you had a situation with your boss Stur, and he was complaining that he's surrounded by idiots. Everyone around me is an idiot, and you asked that very simple, innocent question. But well, who hired them, right? And I really like that because the reflection is on you. If you're surrounded by idiots, maybe you should be looking in the mirror, right? And it starts with self-awareness. So my question here is, I have young kids, and I've shown them this book, and they like the title of the book. But then when we start to talk about self-awareness, they don't really get it. They don't really understand at this state, at this point in time, what self-awareness actually is. And then there are adults who still don't understand what self-awareness is. So how would you express that? How would you explain what that self-awareness looks like and what you can do as a result of putting some focus on self-awareness?
That is a great question, Tony. Well, what it is to begin with, my understanding is that self-awareness is, well, it's actually a two-part thing, really, and most people miss the second part. I would say mainly it is about to see yourself clearly, to understand who you really are, to understand your own pros and cons and your own behavioral traits, if you're an extrovert or introvert, and all of those things. There's a number of things to look at. But what most people are missing is that self-awareness is also to understand what everybody else see when you present yourself to them. What do you see? What do you pick up when I enter the room? When I walk through the door and I think I know who I am, I know what I am like, and how people perceive me. Well, that's a two different questions, really, because what you see is based on who you are. If you think I'm a little bit in a hurry, that's because you might have, let's say, another pace in you psychologically. There's nothing wrong or right. It's just differences here. And somebody else might think that I am the slow person here. So it depends mainly. And if I can't understand you, I can't work on my self-awareness either. So it's pretty complicated. And I agree with what you said. A lot of people don't understand. A lot of grown-ups don't have a clue. They never ponder the question, who am I and why am I like this and what happened and what's going on and where am I going with this, frankly. Those are usually people who are surrounded by idiots, frankly.
Mm.
You know, based on my own research and my vast experience in this, I mean, I've been doing this for more than 30 years now, and I have come to understand that some people are surrounded by more idiots than others. Now, why is that? That's a fascinating topic in itself. Some people are idiot magnets who draw themselves to weirdos and lunatics and all that. And you need to ask yourself, if you think that everybody else is the problem, you need to do better than that, frankly. I mean, we're right in 2026 when we have a conversation here, Tony. And if you haven't picked it up with all the tools and programs and studies and medias out there, all the platforms, if you haven't picked up that people read you in a different way than you read you got some work to do. We need to
Mm.
figure this out, because what we use self-awareness for is, of course, to make things smoother, so to decrease the friction between, let's say, well, when it comes to human interaction, when it comes to how we create connections, how we talk, how we communicate, how we deal with misunderstandings and questions, how we deal with problems and conflicts and a number of things, leadership, parenthood, a lot of things. If you are self-aware, you will succeed in life better than if you are not self-aware. There are studies on this. People who are self-aware, they have an easier way to make a career. They end up in leading positions much easier. When they are in a leading position, they will do a better job because they are self-aware. They are better communicators. And if you lead things, you usually lead people, you lead human beings, right? And if you want to lead human beings, you need to be an excellent communicator. A lot of bosses are super bad at this. They don't understand this at all. That's why I have a so filled calendar, let's say, because this is what I do. I try to help
Mm.
people understand this, reduce the friction, make things more effective. Right.
When you go into the corporate world and with this message, how is it received from the different tiers, from the top to the other layers of management, employees, and other members of the ecosystem?
Well, there is not one straightforward answer to that. A lot of people understand they have a bit of an issue or a challenge, let's call it. A lot of people, of course, understand that. They have done this employee survey and they got bad ratings, and so they know there's a problem. And water is always pouring downwards. I usually start at the very top. If I can go to the owners of any company, the founders even, and talk to them and say, hey, how about your CEO? What about your management team? What about your board? What is going on in there, If I can achieve access to them, I can sort of plant the idea. We're talking about human beings. Even if you are a highly paid CEO with a vast, your resume is long as my arm, are you sure they are communicating the absolute best way, or are they just pretty good at it? And that's where I start. And the problem with this is that a lot of people as you know, as we say in Swedish, I'm going to kick in an open door here. That means to state the bleeding obvious, right? To say something everybody understands, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's a big difference between being a leader and being a manager. A manager is someone you have to follow. A leader is someone you want to follow. And people who are leaders, they can be in the same spot in the organizational chart, sure, in the same box there. But if they are leaders, they understand this pretty easily. The problem is, of course, that the majority of the managers are not leaders. They are managers. So they don't get it. There's no, let's say, they don't get a free card to work on these things just because they are managers. They have made a career. Maybe they start, if we talk about, I don't know, sales, just an example, it could be anything. You got a good sales guy, and then he worked on the sales desk and help desk and sales, and then he started with telemarketing, and now he's a sales rep, and now he's the team leader of the sales reps, and now he's a sales director, and now he's the CEO maybe, because he sort of worked himself upwards because he could do business. Is this the same thing as being able to lead people? It is not connected one bit. And I'm myself one of these examples. As I mentioned, my story, I messed it up. A lot of people are messing it up, really. And if they don't understand they need to work on themselves in order to be a good communicator, in order to be a good leader, they're going to fail.
Mm.
It's just going to fail. A lot of people like to point fingers and say it's the team's fault. I'm sitting over there. So they're sending their teams to a workshop or to a lecture. They are staying home reading emails or sending emails, really, because they know everything already.
Mm.
No, quote, end quote. So, yeah, I could talk for hours about this specific.
The change that with this book, with your work, the body of work that you do, what are the changes that you want to see in the world with this body of work?
That's an excellent, excellent question. I have pondered this a lot because I've invested a little bit more than half of my years on this earth to these specific issues. I call them issues. If I should be politically correct, I would say challenges. We can do it. Well, there are issues / problems, and sometimes they are just catastrophes. Why? I would like the correct, the most beautiful answer would be I like to help people. Sure, I like to help people, but it's a bigger issue than that because there's a number of ways you can actually help people out. I think I am helping people if I am actually hands on reducing the friction in society. It sounds like a hallelujah response. I understand that, but I'm serious. If I can reduce the friction between human beings and make people better at communicating, better at reaching out, better at actually connecting. I mean, we are communicating quite a lot, frankly, on social media platforms and using emails, and and we are on an online platform, you and I, right now, so we can see each other's faces. But if we couldn't see our faces, if you had called me up on my phone, it wouldn't have been as good as this, right? I just assume you will agree. So we can read facial expressions, a little bit of body language. I'm waving my hands, trying to look smart. You're going to take all this in and try to make something out of it. But if I can help to reduce the friction, increase the effectivity, efficiency. I'm struggling to understand in English if being effective or being efficient. It's not the same thing, but I really can't understand the difference as a Swedish guy. They are connected, but how? Anyways,
Yeah,
the point is this: there's too much friction, there's too much misconnection, misunderstandings, and useless conflicts going on out there.
yeah.
And if I can help just a tiny little bit, I'm a happy guy. That's going to help people out. But I'm really looking for making things smoother, easier, not necessarily nicer, because we will not get along on everything all the time. That's a sort of a heavenly, non-existing place to look for, I think. But we can do better. If we just did 10% better, people would be easy to be around, really.
I mean,
That's my drive. I want to release the brakes when it comes to make people dare to speak openly to each other in a pleasant way that people will understand. If I'm sending you a message, I need to be straightforward, but I can be straightforward in a number of ways, right? I don't have to be blunt or impolite. I can be straightforward, but in a positive way, if I know how. Does it make any sense at all?
yeah, and there's a couple of things that spring to mind as you're saying this. Is the the idea of friction when it comes to nature in general? I think it's part of nature, right? If you go to
Always.
if you take a microscope and look at our body cells, they're always in friction, right? So I don't think even on a micro level, we are everything about us is in friction. And so for me, friction in and of itself is not a bad thing. I think what causes the issues is how we handle friction and what we do as a result of that friction. And I also think we haven't mentioned this either, but I think sometimes avoiding friction in and of itself, avoiding conflict can actually cause problems as well because people feel they are inadequately equipped to be able to handle conflict and friction. And that also is a great cause of challenges that we have, I think.
Absolutely. Totally agree. I'm certainly not saying we can reduce the friction and everybody will be friends and live happily ever after. That's not my message here. My message is, can we reduce the stupid friction, the unnecessary
Yeah.
friction? Of course, there's going to be friction. With no friction, we're not going to get heat or anything. Energy comes from friction. So that's a great point. But when it comes to, you know, I mean, we have a misunderstanding, you and I. Let's say, for the sake of argument, you tell me something, and I really think that's really stupid. Maybe I'm the fool. That could be the case, but I don't agree at all. So I can
Mm.
just confront you and say that's a stupid thing, or I stay silent and I just walk away. I nod and say, and so I go home and I tell my wife, Tony, he's sort of a weird dude. I don't get him at all. I talk to him for an hour. I can't wrap my head around. He's just weird. But I won't tell you. Next time we have a chat, I'm going to pretend everything is cool. But
Right.
you're going to sense there is something, and you're going to tell me, is there something between us? Do we have a problem, you and I? And I would say, no, 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 no. Everything is just fine. So I'm avoiding friction, as you just pointed out. That is what I call this let's say, a harmony view on things. I want harmony. So I pretend there is no friction. I pretend there is no conflict. So I just wipe it under the rug and pretend it's not there until 8 months later, I've built it up inside of me and you just add on more and more and more. Now I'm going to get a completely tantrum here, like a 2-year-old, because now you provoke me just over the edge here because I was looking for harmony, but I got conflict, right? Because I avoided the friction. My mission is to make people understand if you take the friction when it's small and tiny, that's the conflict view of things. You tell me something, and instead of just pretending, okay, what do I know? I'm going to ask you, say, hey, I really don't follow that. Could you please give me a couple of examples? What do you really mean here? What are we talking about here? And then you can, oh, well, I didn't mean it like that. I meant it like this and that. And you can sort of describe and explain and go deeper. So we sort of solve the whole thing when it's kind of solvable. But it's still some friction. I agree with you. But maybe we don't need a stupid friction because I don't dare to confront you. I don't want to annoy you or frustrate you or make you angry. Maybe he's going to get angry. I'm telling Tony, I don't agree. Maybe he's going to be mad at me or sad or feel bad, or it could be anything, So I'm just going to pretend all is just cool, but it isn't. What I'm talking about is dealing with friction when it's manageable instead of just wiping it under the rug. End rant. But I think we can do better. We need some conflicts. They can be very productive, sure, but we don't need the silly conflicts because of misunderstandings and because we just can't listen to each other. A lot of the conflicts going on in the world is people just don't pay attention. They are in their own heads. Just look at what happens on social media. No one is reading the caption thoroughly and trying to weigh things. Okay, could it be this? Could it be that? I read the title and I read a couple of sentences. What an idiot. I'm going to tell him, boom, 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 boom. Then you go. Everyone is mad and angry. Nobody knows why, really, because everyone's an idiot. Surrounded by idiots. There you go. Huh.
Yeah. Back to the book. So in the book, you talk about, and I'd like to just, I know you've probably done this 1,000 times, but there will be people who will be maybe listening to this for the first time. And you talk about the different personality types. No. I said that last time and you said, no, they're not personality, they're behaviors, right? Behavior types. So correct yourself, Tony, it's behaviors. Frame it for us for the 4 different types of behavioral personalities.
Right. This is the disc profile dressed in colors. You have extroversion versus introversion. Then you have task orientation versus people orientation. So you get this 2x2 matrix. It's a classic way to just divide the basics. Now, please, before anyone says to himself, well, there's got to be more than 4 types of people. Of course. But when you bake a cake, I usually take this as an example. You know what the milk is, you know what the eggs are doing. If you put salt there or sugar or whatever, if you put extra sugar in there, what it's going to do with the cake when you try to eat it. You need to understand the basics, and then you can make a mix out of it. So everyone has the capacity for any of these 4 boxes, which is we mention them red, yellow, green, and blue because it's a pedagogical thing. It's easy to remember red and yellow behavioral type instead of a high D over an I with a low C. Or an ENTJ personality. Sorry, INTJ. ITPK, is it? Red and yellow. Red and yellow. Well, there you go. It gets stuck in your mind. That's why I use that variety. And so you get the red people who are fast forward thinkers, very result oriented, a bit competitive, a bit blunt. Some people think they are slightly harsh. Sometimes they can be, maybe, could be. It's an interpretation, I guess. Then you have the yellow people who are happy ones, the shiny ones, the smiley ones. They are creative. They see solutions everywhere, and they think the weather is lovely, even in Barcelona when it's raining. And even if you say it is actually raining, well, the sun is always shining somewhere, and you got to stay on the positive side. That's the yellow trait. Then you have the green personality, more stable, more into focusing on the team instead of him or herself. Very helpful, very caring, very sharing, very not into conflict at all, really. No. They like to stay friends, They are excellent listeners to hear what you say. They're going to remember what you said, especially if it was something bad. Especially if it was something bad about the green person. It's going to be filed on shelf 1A for eternity, but I won't tell you. because they don't like conflict, so they won't tell you. You have to drag it out from them, read body language and all that. And then you have finally the blue character, who is the introverted, task-oriented type, which gives you an engineer or maybe an accountant, detail-focused, quality, very meticulous, focused on details, very thorough when it comes to making everything right, ask a lot of questions, focuses on details. Did I mention details? Because that's where the devil hides. You need to go to the very bottom of things. You need to dig and dig and dig and dig down to the groundwater, because there might be some interesting details down there. So there you have the four basics. And again, you can have a couple of these traits within you. And if you add drivers, as in motivators, and you add a couple of other things, you're going to see a personality sort of emerge from this. But behaviors, as you pointed out, that's good you mentioned that. Personality is what you try to understand based on what you see. But behaviors is what you can see and what you can hear. But it's actually a bit more shallow than going deep down into someone's intrinsic psyche, let's say. But it gives you a great tool to start with. Here you got like 80% of someone's, let's say, behavior or persona. You can call it persona, maybe. You know a lot, but you don't know everything. So that's true.
And your book's been translated into 70 different languages. And I remember when we spoke last time, you took that as a clear signal that this is not just specific to one culture. It's been translated into 70 different languages. So at least 70 different cultures are interested in knowing more about digging into this area. What do you know? What have you seen on your travels over the years around different cultures and how they approach this type of work?
It is quite fascinating. I had to change. That's one thing that I really had to rethink and reconsider, because I thought, what I think a lot of people are assuming, that people are very different over the globe. People in South America, it's not like us Europeans at all. It turns out I was horribly wrong there, because they are actually the same. The culture differs. The culture varies, of course, a lot. But when you go deeper on an individual level, you can define reds, yellows, greens, and blues exactly the same way. In Chile or in California or in Canada, or if you go to Poland or Spain or Serbia or Japan or Sweden, people have the same reflections, let's call them. They have the same questions. They have the same aha moment. When I lecture in Hong Kong and we have a Q&A afterward, it's the same aha moments as in on Iceland. And the same oh no moments as well. Oh no, I recognize myself. Oh, that's hard. Which tells me one big thing here. People are not very different all over the globe. The differences are the same, regardless of where you find people, but the culture varies a lot. In Sweden, we have sort of a green blanket on top of things, which means we close our fist in the pocket and say everything is perfect, while still grinding our teeth. They don't do that in, let's say, in Spain, for instance, right? They do it in Finland. They have sort of an introvert society. People don't speak unless they have something to say. And then you go to Italy, and they speak because they like to speak, they like to talk, so they just talk. But statistically speaking, we have equal number of reds, yellows, greens, and blues everywhere in the industrialized world where we have data. We have about somewhere between 55 and 60 million assessments to lean on here. So there's a lot of data. Is this telling us the whole truth? No, it isn't. But you can see the patterns emerge, and they look very, very much the same. So I have stopped adjusting how I present these things. If I go to Singapore, I basically give the same introduction, the same talk, the same keynote when it comes to these topics. I'm talking about specifically these topics, right? I'm not talking about how to lead or how to deal with your kids, because there you have a lot of cultural differences. But if you talk about behaviors, it's the same keynote in Singapore as in I don't know, in Amsterdam. And that fascinates me a lot, a lot.
Mm.
I probably have 100,000 messages, DMs, emails the last 14 years, and they all say the same thing. I have a green wife. Now I get. Oh, my husband is red. Now I get it. Totally makes sense, and it warms my heart a little bit because that means there is a way to reduce the friction. Everyone can use the same system, only if they know what it is. I think
Yeah.
that's what makes this topic and the book perhaps work on every continent. It fascinates me. It humbles me quite a lot, actually, because I'm just a guy up here in cold Scandinavia. But I am fortunate to meet people everywhere, and
Mm.
it's pretty cool, I have to say.
Well, I last week I bought this book for a friend of mine. We were
Thank
traveling
you.
together, and I told them all about the book, and excuse me, my voice is gone, and I tell you why. Because my favorite football team, Arsenal, were playing at the weekend, and I support Arsenal, so that's why you hear my voice might sound a little bit hoarse, because I was screaming and shouting at the weekend. So apologies if I have to keep repeating. So my friend, I bought the book, and I prefaced it by saying, uh, when I observe you with in your natural habitat, you act as if you're the smartest person in the room. And I said, and the problem is, usually you are. The only thing is, it's the way in which you express your thoughts and ideas. They tend to push other people away. So the way in which you communicate your ideas, to you, it's like Dunning-Kruger. It's just like so obvious. So guys, let's just do this. But understanding that people have different ways of receiving information and communicating, if you would just do a little bit of, maybe have a bit of empathy in terms of how people receive information, maybe the message you're looking to get across will land in a different way. And I said, do you often feel that you're surrounded by idiots? And he said, yes, I do. And I said, I've got a book for you that you're going to absolutely love. Um, and the
Uh,
beauty of this conversation, Thomas, is it ended with him saying, I think it starts with me. I think I need to start looking at myself. And I said, well, read the book first, and then let's have another conversation. So I just wanted to share that with you, because I remember I heard you say, and I use this all the time. I love this example. You have to have a start point before you go anywhere, and you use the example of the airport, going on a trip, right? And so, for me, this book does give you a start point. It makes you realize that you have to start with yourself, and then only then can you then start to have points of reference in terms of the way you connect and behave with other people. Would you say that's an accurate depiction?
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Just wasting 30 seconds of everyone's life here and expanding that example as you referred to here. And I tried this for fun just to see what kind of reaction I would get. A couple of years ago, I called my travel agency up and said, I want a ticket to London. And they said, no problem. From where would you like to go? And I said, never mind that. Just get me the ticket. And just to see what happened. And of course, they couldn't solve it, but they understood I was sort of pranking them a little bit. But a lot of people act exactly like that. They don't understand how they are perceived themselves. And interesting enough, with your smart friend there, intelligence doesn't help you one bit.
Hmm.
Frankly, intelligent people are a bigger problem here than, let's say, not so intelligent people, wherever you want to lay the line here. I'm not going into that debate because that's very dangerous. But the thing is this, smart people are always right, you see, which means they can draw conclusions quicker. They see patterns before I see them and all of that things, all of those things. But the thing is, when it comes to understand themselves, when it comes to understand, they have to work on themselves. Why would they? They are the ones who see things clearly, you know, and everybody else are sort of messing it up. Why would I change? I am the only one who gets it. But that doesn't help at all, because if I don't follow, it doesn't matter if you're right or I'm
Yeah.
wrong. You have no use of that information. If you're gonna explain to me how a rocket engine works, you're gonna call me an idiot very soon, because I can't follow, the argumentation here. Firstly, I'm not interested in rocket propulsion engines. Second, I will not understand it. Fission technique, I will not understand it. Don't mess with me. But smart people try to make it simple by giving you all the data, all the facts. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. And if they don't understand something, if I tell them something and they don't follow because it's not their topic, I mean, intelligence, you can't know everything just because you're super smart. It's two different things. If they're not well read up on, let's say, the four colors, they won't get them. Then I'm still the idiot.
Mm.
So I have seen so many really, really deep, year-long, plural long conflicts between super smart people who stop talking to each other, friends from, way back, because everyone's an idiot in here. They have
Mm.
stopped talking for 17 times, but who's counting? And everyone is surrounded. So it's really, really fascinating. I mean, this self-awareness thing, if you touched upon it just now, if I'm going to meet, let's say I'm going to meet a green person, someone who is very friendly, not very into changes, maybe a bit looking for stability, and you're not, we're not in a hurry. I know this is my desk. I've been here for 19 years. That kind of character. When I'm going to implement some new stuff to this individual, should I slow my own pace in order to reach them, or should I speed up a little bit? What's the answer to that question? The answer is we don't know
Mm.
unless you know your own pace. If I don't know what level I'm at, if I'm red, I really need to slow down, talking to green. But if I'm blue, I need to speed up. Otherwise, they will get bored and just leave the room. So all these things, you need the starting point, because we can use the travel agency example as well and say, hey, I'm in London. I would like to have a flight. I would like to have a ticket. I'm going to get out of London, And they say, okay, where would you like to go? Never mind that, But where are you going? I don't know, but get me out of here. It's not going to work. You need both dots on the map. You need to connect these dots. You need to know where you are and where you are going. And sadly enough,
Mm.
most people are a little bit different. So you need to pay attention to the one you have in front of you. You need to look him in the eyes or her in the eyes and just read the body language, facial expressions. I usually say, go green if you don't know, which means be silent, be a good listener, close the lid in the front and open your ears and just pay attention for a couple of minutes and put the puzzle together, put the pieces together and try to make a quick assessment. You can do that if you know what to do. Have you read the Surrounded by Idiots or taken the assessment yourself? Call one of my partners up. I'm building a global network of people working with it specifically now, surrounded by network, and look them up. And then you have sort of a roadmap. You can just do it. It's very simple, but you need to do the work. You need to do the groundwork.
Yeah.
Smartness doesn't help you. You need to be social competent, interested. You need to be interested in
Yeah.
getting
Curious.
along better with people, not to make friends maybe, but in order to again reduce useless friction
Yeah.
and to move on with whatever you're up to.
I
That's
mean,
it.
you talk about doing the research. As you know, I researched you, looked obviously the book, looked at some interviews that you'd done previously, and you confused me because I saw one interview where you seemed extremely blue, and you
Just
weren't you and you I don't think you showed your teeth once. I didn't know you could smile. And then I saw another interview with Chris Evans, who is one of my favorite actually radio presenters, hilarious guy.
oh yeah,
And you were cracking jokes. You were a completely different person. And I thought, what is this guy? Are you blue? Are you red? Are you green? Maybe share a little bit about, is it your knowledge of all the colors that allows you to be able to move quickly through each, or is this something that we all do naturally anyway? Anyway.
yes and no. I don't do it naturally. I do it deliberately. I do it well, it's natural for me now, but it wasn't referring back to my old bank calamity there. Uh, I have learned how to do that. I mean, Chris Evans, that's a great example because he was funny, great guy, smiling, cracking jokes. So it was really easy to just to tune into him, sort of tap into his energy. So therefore, I did more of this, and hey, you know what? And then he was laughing, and there was a couple of other people in the studio, if I can recall this. This was this in London? Could it been in London? I was. We were in the same room, and. But otherwise, someone who is quite. I've spoken to neuroscientists on their podcast, and they're very controlled, very introvert, and they have this frowning forehead, and you can see problems stacking up. So they want to go deeper into this, and so then we do that, and I just adjust to the individual, because if I'm cracking jokes to the neuroscientist, yes, that was a little bit of a stereotype. I understand that, but still, anyone listening understand the point here. Talking to my accountant is different than talking to my PR agent. Thankfully, thankfully, that's good news. Where was I? Yes, so it's all about adapting to the situation. What I don't know is if the audience likes it or not. I can't say that. But if I'm going to have a fruitful, interesting conversation, you and I, with as much value to the viewers/listeners as possible, if you and I are sort of getting along and we can sort of tap into each other's persona a little bit, at least as much as possible, it's going to be a better conversation. It's going to be more interesting, better dynamic. You don't have to do anything, but if you do it, you're going to reduce the friction again. I can sit next to you. If anyone is looking and they see the video, I'm crossing my arms in front of me, and you ask me, tell me about your early career. I say, okay, well, I messed it up. Next question, please, because I feel really horrible about that, and I hate to remember that bloody situation. Why would he remind me? What a dude. I could have done that as well, but I don't, because you're coming from a positive point. You're coming from an honest point of view. You like to understand. We are sort of hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully giving interesting insights away. And for me, it's about finding the dynamic in the room. The challenge is, of course, if I'm talking to 2 or 3 or 4 people at the same time, then I need to sort of use the whole spectrum. But I can do that because I've practiced it for 30 years. Anyone can be good at this, but you need to deliberately observe yourself and learn how to observe your surroundings. That is the case. It's simple, but it's not easy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of a lot of the people I work with on a daily basis in the world of emotionally intelligent negotiation. This is where, for me, the rubber meets the road. Is how do we take this stuff, and then how do we, when we are dealing with teams where we have competing narratives or competing KPIs, or when we're looking to work with investors or other members of our ecosystem, where on paper we would seem to have maybe competing priorities, and how do we actually sit that down, and using the knowledge and the skills that you're talking about, how do you weave that into an interaction? Because there's the substance, there's the process, but then there's this other stuff that's in the background, in the ether, that often doesn't get talked about, and this is this kind of stuff. How would you marry those together?
I don't know. I haven't thought of it like that. That's a great question. I'm not sure I know the correct answer. I, a lot of things going on in a conversation is on a subconscious level, right?
Yeah.
We do a lot of things and we adjust, and we mirror somebody's body language. We try to be polite in the beginning. We're not thinking about it. Now I'm going to smile. I'm going to shake hands here. I'm going to do this or that. Some things is just rooted in our, not in our DNA, but in our inner core, intrinsical, standard of how to deal with people that we don't know, maybe. So a lot of things just comes. And sometimes, if you're on the spectrum, you don't care. You're going to do it whatever way you want. I usually try not to, I try not to, what would you say? I try not to overthink. As I said before, when I meet people completely from the beginning, first acquaintance, first moment when I sit down with them, I try to hold back a little bit and I just observe as much as possible. We sit around the table. Oh, would you like coffee or tea? Oh, a cup of tea would be excellent. Thank you so much. Okay. And someone comes in, a biscuit. Well, why not? If they're taking a biscuit, I'm taking a biscuit. But we know this is smart. This is a smart move. You just adjust to the situation. But I observe and I try to find out what is being said here, what is not being said. I read body language. I read facial expressions. I look at if someone is getting straight to the point, if they just bring out the agenda. Okay, point 1A. We're going to close the deal today. You need to lower your pricing. You're an idiot, Or if they say, well, there are a couple of things to discuss here. So let's do that. But then we talk about the weather a little bit. It's raining. Okay. Now I hear cracking thunder here. I hope the line doesn't break because it's really noisy. You don't hear my thunder. I hope it's really noisy out there. But so we can talk about the weather. We can also try to see, who do you know? Do you know someone that I know? Do we have any connections before? Do we have any common buddies somewhere in the world? Or if they sit down with a complete stone face, they don't offer you anything, you just open the folder and say, okay, point 1A. And they start to read, line by line by line. All this gives you information. I know what I'm doing there. I know what the end goal is. Hopefully they have the same end goal, but they will talk about how to achieve it in a very different way. Actually, I just try to see what is going on. If there is someone who is an extrovert, maybe a combination of red, as in very goal-oriented, they like to win this negotiation, let's say it's a negotiation, let's call it that. But they're also smiling a little bit, they are open-minded and somewhat friendly, but not the hallelujah type, but they're, sort of open to things, but kind of strict with the agenda still. So there's a combination of red and yellow there, probably. Then I will show energy. I will lean forward. I will just try to tap into what they are doing. I will try to mirror body language deliberately instead of, if someone is leaning backwards, I take this as, okay, I said something stupid, then I'm leaning backwards. Depending on who it is on the other side, that's going to work. If the red person is leaning forwards, I will absolutely lean forward. If they lean backward, I will keep leaning forward because they need to be challenged. All these are details that I can use and put together. And for me, it takes 30 seconds, 45 seconds, if it's not a complete conundrum on the other side of the table, or it's 9 people and everyone is different. That could happen too. But that's where I begin. Sometimes I need to ask, what's your end goal here? Why are you in the room? And how they explain it will tell me a lot of the story. We like to close this deal, but we have questions. Or we think this is the best offer so far. We need to add a couple of things here. Or we are not convinced at all. Could we have done this on the phone or using email, Or someone said, I don't even know why I'm talking to you at all because I find you pretty stupid, really. I have been in all these situations. How they sort of treat me tells me something as well. I'm probably not answering your question there, but but you need to use your imagination a little bit. There's always patterns. Again, if you have, I say, there's a red person. It's not someone who is always dominant and a bit of a bully and steps on my toes constantly because they don't care about my feelings. No. But you have red patterns. You have specific traits. You can see a pattern. You can see tendencies. That's what you're looking for. No one is supposed to be stereotyped into a corner. A lot of the criticism for these kind of systems is you can't put people in boxes. Well, we put people in boxes constantly now, don't we? We put people in boxes every day. The trick is, of course, to put the right people in the right box and then do the right thing about this observation. You can practice, you can train yourself to be good at it. And then you're there when you know how these are. You sort of tap into their energy or whatever you want to call it. You sort of find them, so you paste them somewhere. And then you can start to lead them. And then you can ask the more, let's say, sensitive questions. I think you're a bit cheap, you see. I can't tell that to anyone, but I can say it to one type of people. I think you're a bit cheap now. I understand you have a budget issues, I would tell somebody else. Let's see how I can help you to solve those. But it means the same thing, really. To some people, to red people, I can say, it's not expensive. This program is not expensive. It's you who can't afford it, you see. That's the problem here. Oh, wow, that's a challenge. Some people will get completely furious. Other people will just lean forward and say, I'm buying, I'll take 3 of those, I'll take them in every color. Are you calling me poor? What is going on here? So it depends on who it is, right? One good friend. You said you knew Henry Wilson. I met him 2 years ago. Henry used to tell me this, and then I add something that helps in this. So now I have a bridge from a relationship that we have together, you see. That's what you do with yellow people. Oh, do you know Henry Wilson? Such a great guy. Wow, what a dude. You can't do that with the blue person. He don't know Henry Wilson. If he knows Henry Wilson, that's none of your business, really. So all of this can be put together.
Yeah.
You can train yourself to understand these energies, these patterns, these tendencies. Sometimes I fail. Sometimes I read the room the wrong way. That happens as well. Sure. Not so often now than before, but it happens to me as well. Sure. Some people are more tricky to understand. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. We are coming to the end. But there is a question that has come up for me as you mentioned this, and it's around the idea of manipulation, right? It is at what point does this stuff sound as if it's being manipulative? At what point does it sound as if you're using tricks and tactics to try and get people to do things that you want them to do?
That is an interesting way of looking at it. I would say, as I've written also about manipulation, I've written 2 books about manipulation, really, surrounded by psychopaths and narcissists, both excellent manipulators, a little bit different, but still. So I've looked into this topic quite a lot. And for me, I would say, I would answer it like this. It depends on your motives, I would say. If I want to hurt you, if I want to steal from you, if I want to get some perks from you without telling you, then it's manipulation. But if we are sitting around a negotiation table, I am protecting my position here. We understand the game here. I can't do this. I can't help you with that. You know the name of the games. It's all sort of out in the open. We know we are looking for something. I can even tell you, I can't give you what you need. I can go back to my boss and see if she will sort of, help you out. But I can't do this. That's a negotiation gambit, let's call it. But people know that. Yeah, go and ask her, whatever, and come back 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If it's sort of in the open, we are dealing with stuff. Now I use negotiations as an example. There's a number of other things as well. If a woman tells her husband, when you treat me like this, I feel really, really bad. I wish you wouldn't do that. If she means that, he mistreated her, he called her something, or he didn't listen, or whatever it was, and it's true, it's honest. He will sit down and say, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Let's talk about this. I didn't mean it. I do apologize. How should I have done this instead?" Okay, fine. That's fine. That's how you pace your partner. That's how you try to deal with, how do you tap into, how do you adapt to the other individual. So he sits down, he lowers his voice and says, "I'm truly sorry. I didn't mean it that. It's all on me. I'm an idiot. I'm the idiot." But if she tells him, "If you treat me like this, I feel really, really bad, and I'm going to go out with the girls because now you need some punishment here." That's manipulation.
Mm.
She just tells him he's been a jerk so she can, go downtown with the girls. That is manipulation, because then she doesn't speak the truth, and that's a lie. Lies are manipulation. That's how I draw the line. When your motives are pure, when where you're coming from is real and honest, then it's adaptation. Otherwise, it's manipulation. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And it does make sense. It's the intention behind it.
Exactly.
On the outside, it may look one way, but I think if the intention is to get somebody to do something that is inherently good for you, but not good for them, then that's manipulation. But if the intention is to generally make the situation better for all parties, then maybe that's more persuasion or influence rather than manipulation. But I think that there is a kind of a thin line, and it's just like anything. If you use it in the right way to produce good results, good outcomes for all involved, then that's a good thing. It does also um, ensure that if for me to be pushing for something that's a good outcome, I really need to engage with you, Thomas. I need to understand really what's going on in your world. So I understand what your definition of a good outcome is. And if I don't do that work to understand what a good outcome is on your side, then I'm just pushing for my own interest. And that also that also would fall for me under the class of manipulation.
Absolutely. It's like saying this is a win-win situation, which are very rare. There are not many win-win situations. It's usually win-lose, lose-win situation, frankly.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
can try to make it as, equal as possible. I received an email a couple of years ago from, doesn't matter from where. It said basically a lot of words. It ended with, "Thank you for this system. Can you please tell me how I can use it the best way so I can use other people?" I never responded to that. But I would say this, it's not about the system or the model or whatever if you use DISC or MBTI or Big Five or, OP, it doesn't really matter. That's not the point. The point is the user of any model is the one who determines if it's going to be
Yeah.
used for good or for not so good.
Yeah.
It's like with anything on the electricity. You can use electricity to cook a man a meal, but you can use electricity to cook the man. It depends on who's, pulling the strings here. So we need, of course, to be careful. And I get some criticism. Don't tell people how this works because some people will manipulate you. Well, they're going to try to do that anyway.
Anyway,
So,
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so what I mean now, I'm giving you, frankly, a kind of defense against this. Now you know what's going on
Mm.
within your family or at work and within your, closest, friends or whatever. The context matter. The people matters. And some people are not pure in their hearts. Let's say
Yeah.
that's just the way it is. Humanity is not the loveliest creature on the planet, I'm afraid. But we have to work with what we have, right? And we can do better. That's what I told you in the beginning. I want to reduce the friction. I want to make these things easier, simpler, more effective, smoother. Use any word you want to make us get along better without having to negotiate away and lose yourself in the process. If you have a super red partner and you are super duper green and only green, nothing but green, it's gonna wear you down a little bit. Maybe that is not your dream partner. You're gonna end up in conflict constantly. I'm not saying you can't make it work, but if he or she, the other person, isn't even trying, you can't do it all by yourself. You have to meet somewhere in the middle, and everyone doesn't fit well together. That is also a harsh truth. People don't like to hear that,
Yeah.
but it's the truth. That is just the way it is. It's a reality check, frankly. Maybe another meeting.
Thomas, yeah, we have come to the end. You said to me, success for this conversation, success will be if I don't get to ask all the questions because we've gone so deep into conversation, and that's exactly what's happened.
How did it go?
I didn't get
Okay,
to ask all the questions, but
right.
we
Sorry
went. No,
about
no,
that.
it's been fantastic. I've written down because I've got pages of notes here, and what I've circled here: humble, curious, vulnerable. Right, humble because this is how I find you. Humble because you have any question I've asked you, you haven't tried to dodge any answers. You've just been really truthful and humble about the way in which you've answered them. The vulnerability, I think, to put yourself in a position where you do that self-awareness, you need to be vulnerable to some extent because you need to hear third party feedback, and that puts you in that position. And I think you demonstrate that. And curious, I think those the curious, you have demonstrated that clearly. And the last thing I've written that I absolutely love is context matters and we can do better. That's my signing off signature that I think I'll have for you. If our listeners want to follow up with you, Thomas, if they want to find out what you're doing, if they want to connect with you, how can our listeners find you?
The easiest way is to go to my webpage, surroundedbyidiots.com. What I would urge them to do is, if they are sort of in the business and curious on how to use these things on a very deliberate way, we have, as I touched upon, a partner program. We are actively looking for my team and I for partners. So there's some interesting information there. You find it easily. I'm on social media, but I'm not big on social media because I like live meetings when I can see the person. I mean, this is a great conversation. So very, very much thank you for that. Just communicate, sending stuff out in space. It's never been my thing. I suck at it, frankly, and I understand it. But I am on LinkedIn and Instagram and whatnot. So yeah, YouTube. That's a growing channel, frankly. YouTube, surrounded by idiots. Forgot about that. Longer content, you can find a lot of insights there. I allow myself to speak for over an hour sometimes because I am curious and I find all of this fascinating. People are fascinating.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. Thomas Erikson, thank you for joining us today on Empathy at the Table. It's been a fantastic conversation, and I look forward to following you. And I didn't know you had the other two books, so I'm going to look up those other two books as well.
There's actually 8 of them in the series, but
Wow. And is it all surrounded by? All of them are surrounded
Yep.
by?
All of them surrounded by different types of people. Yeah. It's all on the webpage.
Super.
You can see it there. So thank you also. Great conversation. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm going to go deep into the rabbit hole for that's my summer reading list already sorted. Thank you, Thomas. Thanks very much.